So there is public hearings, and we always have public hearings, but there's a staff that works on this stuff that maybe you should meet with once in a while, and when they ask you to meet, and you don't have time,
I don't.
but you
Hold
have
on,
time to come
Commissioner
up.
Hadcock, hold on a second. We're not going down that road. We're not.
We are, 'cause we
No,
just
we're
said
not.
that
I'm
we
gonna
do it
hammer you down. I'm not gonna go down the road of beating up another commissioner because of his thought process during the public hearing.
That's not beating them up.
No, it is.
It's
You're-
common sense that if you have an issue, you should talk to your staff so they know.
Order,
Your order.
my order,
Yep, good for
Ron's
you.
order.
Good for you.
Conversation, because it's only really the way we're gonna get anything accomplished that we all agree on. We have to have the conversation
You
here.
gotta
and I
let
think-
one finish, please.
Well, you didn't have the floor at the time.
did.
It was no.
You let her
Anyway,
interrupt.
I'm not gonna argue with you. So that's the one thing I don't wanna have happen. So we'll move. Ms. Brittany?
Item F is public hearing of ordinance amendment OA 25-18 for Pennington County to amend section 322 special animal keeping regulations of the zoning ordinance. There were some changes on setbacks, some definitions were clarified. The number of animal units per lot size, there were some updates and there was some clarification and adding of different animal types that weren't included in the previous one. So I guess staff will entertain any questions.
Commissioner Durr, you have the floor.
Yeah. So yeah, as you go through here on some of these changes, and again, can we get some of these redlined when they come forward?
Well, this one, it was a complete rewrite. So the formatting had changed. Most of it has changed.
All right.
I can highlight the major points
So
in the.
let me,
Okay,
I'm just going to go through and cover
okay.
what I see. And some of that I mentioned a comment to you, but in here it says presumption of maturity, and then you have it in the different sections of fowl and going through. But anyway, it says automatically presuming animals are mature unless otherwise judged by the planning director. And so in some sections you have that anything 6 months or older is mature. And then you have where, the planning director will determine the maturity.
So that is actually in the current section of the ordinance and so that's all removed. So that is actually on page 3. Page 4 is the start of the new proposed text, and that was removed.
Okay.
So the maturity would be anything over 6 months of age. So there's no presumption and there's no determination by our office on what that is.
All right.
So there is some clarification.
And then getting to your setback. And so we had this discussion. So for example, is the setback, it was 50 feet for, let's just say a horse is out on an acre lot and the property line. And the way you would look at the ordinance as it is existing right now, then if you have a barbed wire fence separating two properties, the individual that has the horse, based on our ordinance, would have to build a secondary fence or enclosure 50 feet from that property line. Is that still the case?
No, it is not.
And what is that setback?
In the current ordinance, it's 25 feet. The enclosures, if it's a coop or something like that, that's a structure, it'd have to be 25 feet. If there are roaming animals there, it is not in there any longer. So it does not read that way any longer.
Okay, and does the setback vary based on lot size?
No, so it's 25 feet. So if you look at the zoning districts in which this applies, those zoning district requirements, the setbacks are 25 feet, so it matches those. And just so the board is aware, this does not include agricultural properties. Agricultural properties are exempt from the animal keeping.
Correct.
And that is a statutory requirement. This does have to do with rural residential, ranchette, suburban residential 1 and 2. They only allow chickens. There's no other animals that are allowed in those zoning districts.
Jason likes chicken.
And what's wrong with the rooster?
Roosters are not allowed in
You missed the
outside of
planning-
agricultural districts.
You missed the planning meeting on what roosters and chickens and everything were.
He knows the difference between a rooster and a hen.
And a chicken,
Yeah, he does.
what they do with the roosters and all that kind of stuff? If you have a boy one, they only want one rooster and they sell the rest?
You're not talking about agricultural, no, I mean.
No,
if
this is just.
Jerry wants a rooster, he can have a rooster.
No, it's just in here. I mean, again, and I kind of talked to Brittany about this months ago, because and it's actually in Commissioner Roskineck's district, but, some of this I find very over-restrictive, and I find out it was written basically what was called by a citizen chicken committee. And so the basis of this ordinance was written by a bunch of people about chickens going over on somebody else's deck and taking a crap. And so we got citizens put together, and then they put this stuff in here. But I mean, it is very restrictive, and I think overly restrictive on, specifically if somebody has an acre of ground. So for example, how many horses can you have on 1 acre of ground?
According to this, it is one
Yeah.
per one.
That's too restrictive, in my mind anyway. Because again, if you're gonna have, let's say you're a married couple, you have a horse and you have an acre of ground and you've got a barn, you can put a barn on an acre of ground. And then we're saying that you can't have more than 1 horse on an acre of ground.
Can you have a barn on an acre? And how big a barn?
You can have as big a barn as you want, as long as you meet the setbacks.
Yeah,
A barn doesn't
And you
make
So,
very big.
yeah.
meet the stormwater requirements for lot coverage.
What's
No.
that?
You also have to meet the stormwater requirements for lot coverage.
Saying you're gonna have a hell of a time trying to put a barn on an acre.
no. The point being is that it gets down to, and you're saying that the number of animals on a lot comes down to the mitigation aspect, getting back to, does the horse manure create, a nuisance to a neighbor? And so as I look at this, and I know, because again, it gets back to an enforcement issue. And so if you have one neighbor complain about another neighbor having more than 1 animal, they have 2 horses on their property. I don't think they should have 2 horses. The property is meticulously well-maintained. And then we're going to say that no, by ordinance, we're saying that you can only have 1 horse, on an acre of property. And I get that it's, in the district as it's zoned, but, and then you get into it, so then we haven't, under the nuisance ordinance, which is what I was pointing out before, that had some grammatical errors, not this one, so I'm on the 106, has got some issues on it. But then you go back to the nuisance ordinance in Rapid Valley, then we're saying that you could have, how many vehicles on a property. I know we're changing that proposed, but again, so you're talking a residential lot, and then we're going into a rural area, with an acre of ground in this ranchette subdivision, and saying that you can only have 1 animal. And then it comes down to an enforcement issue. And in fact, I know that we're not enforcing it. So I think I understand it came from a citizen committee and went through the process, but overall, I just think the ordinance itself is highly regulatory.
Chair.
Sir, yes, Commissioner Hadcock, I was thinking about what Jerry was saying. They're trying to figure out how to, go ahead.
Well, it's an acre. It's not ag. It's not ranchette. It's an acre. An acre of land with 2 horses, or that there's a whole big difference. And just because it's meticulous today doesn't mean the next person that owns it's meticulous. So you have a reason why you put it on an acre, because it becomes a nuisance sometimes when you have 2 horses, or you have certain areas that can't take that kind of ag on those types of properties. So you have exceptions, I get it, but over-regulatory, in one sense, depends on who you're talking to on over-regulatory on some of this. Are we talking, this one is over-regulated, but the nuisance is not over-regulated?
Right. What
So-
he's saying, I'm going to intervene here because you missed
Why
part
I'm
of what
saying
he
that
said.
is because they put it on an acre for a reason, because they probably had a lot of nuisance calls, a lot of things come to pass, not because one thing happened, is because on an acre, there was probably a number of areas that had issues
Right.
with 2 horses, or the ordinance where it is today. I trust the planning commission vetted some of these areas. Once in a while, okay, somebody turns you in, well, like anybody else, you have to go look. And if you go look and if the property's meticulous, I get it, but what if it's not?
Then it becomes a nuisance.
Okay, no,
Right.
so let's go down to what if it's not? And so the question would be, so one person, goes back to my consistency as to how we enforce or do not enforce ordinances. So you can put anything on paper and you can do all of this, but you gotta have a process to go out and say, you're in non-compliance, I'm gonna do this. And if I were to go out in these areas right now, we have, I'm gonna ask you to take a guess. How many properties falling under this current regulation do you believe would be in non-compliance?
I don't know. All of our nuisance complaints are on complaint basis only.
Correct.
So unless we get complaints on them, we don't go out and look to see if people have animals or if they're over the numbers unless a neighbor complains.
And this goes back to the issue that the people that get subjected to a neighbor moving into an area and getting a complaint, and then they look around and they go throughout this entire area, I'm not the only one, are we going to enforce it on everybody? And then the comment is, nope, only if we get a complaint. So it's inconsistent.
Well, if you'd like them to be proactive, we can do that. No, that's what we're saying. We're saying that, okay, so in one sense, well, let's enforce the law, but we should also enforce the law by being proactive and going around and making sure that by this law that we changed, make sure everybody's compliance with it. So then when we do the nuisance law and we do that, we're gonna go and we're gonna make everybody comply that we've had complaints on, or are we gonna do new complaints? Because if we do that, let's enforce the law.
Yeah.
So that's not what we do. That's not what you do to your citizens. They don't do it to Rapid City. You don't go around and be proactive.
All right.
So, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Hadcock, hold on a second.
yeah, it just goes back to, it's just a comment that I have, and I'm not going to get into individual cases, and I'm not going to get in, it's a philosophy for me.
Right.
And if the government, if the government over-regulates and you create ordinances and you institute things and you create these parameters and you tell people you have to live by these guidelines, we've created an ordinance, yet we don't go out and we don't do anything to follow up on that, then I question why we have the ordinances in the first place. Because I believe the government typically over-regulates too much, particularly when you don't go out and you don't have an enforcement arm, but there's an expectation, but you don't follow through.
Right. I have a complete agreement with what Commissioner Durr is saying, because you got to look at it from the perspective of if you skinning this down to where it just provides a solution for now we got to go find a problem. That's exactly what's happening here.
So Chair, let's talk about the other side.
Commissioner Hadcock, I'm speaking, please.
Well, I was speaking, you guys all interrupted me and I didn't finish, Mr. Weifenbach.
Go ahead.
In fact,
I mean,
Mr.
you
Durr,
take precedence, so let's do it.
it's
Go
not
for it.
precedence, it's
go ahead.
because you guys did the same thing. So, same thing on what you're talking about. If you make it a rule and law and you're not gonna enforce it and they're gonna come up here and you're gonna change it, that's why we have variances, that's why we have all kinds of stuff. That's why you have areas where you can change and make things so they work for people. In the other words, if you're mad about a nuisance law, and now you want to pick on acre land with a couple horses, there's a difference. So let's ask ourselves, are we making these rules for us, or are we over making rules and regulations? Then in the next sense, when you go in the nuisance law, it never was followed through, not because the Planning Commission didn't do their job. It's because the commission didn't have the wherewithal to give them enough money to do their job and have enough people in order to afford or bring forward enough. How many people do you want out there doing code enforcement? So
Are we talking
give
about?
them more money for their
Commissioner
code
Hadcock, are we
enforcement.
talking about this ordinance or the one that's coming up?
Talking about both, because that's what Mr. Durr is doing.
No, he's not. He's pointing
He
out the
is.
fact that we're
He is.
over-regulating, and what we're causing is we're
Well,
causing.
and it's because of the nuisance.
We're trying to find a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. And when you skinny this down like this, is exactly what you said don't want to happen, is what's causing this to happen.
If it didn't exist, they wouldn't have made the rule.
But here, let me explain. Hopefully I can explain it to you so you understand from the perspective where he's coming from, where I'm coming from on this, is the fact that you skinny this down to one horse, and then you got somebody who's got one horse, and it's a nuisance. So all of a sudden, he gets turned in for a nuisance. Now, he's gonna say, okay, now you need to check everybody, because I know that guy has two horses, that guy has two horses. So we're over-regulating, just like we did with the example earlier when we said we shouldn't pass a law that we're not going to enforce. And we're not going to enforce this, I don't know.
So Brittany, why did you do these rules and regs, and why did you come up, and how did you come up with these rules and regs today? Or Jason, can either of you explain why you put this on here? Because they're beating it up, and if it's not going to be enforced, and if they believe that it's not going to work, let's take all the rules and regulations off here and then just let everybody do what they want.
Well, that's not the point, Commissioner Hadcock. Now you're going over the top, because we're talking about,
It's your opinion.
we're talking about regulation and over-regulation, and I think Commissioner Durr and myself feel that some of this is over-regulation and it goes too far, and so what it's gonna do is cause more opportunity for more people just that are abiding by the law to be all of a sudden be out of, you know, if they have 2 horses on 1 acre, that's the top one here or whatever, and they're taking care of it, then why is that a problem?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner?
this actually kind of happened in my district a few months ago, and we got it worked out.
Okay.
And I agree with you and Jerry. You know, I think just too much regulation is not enough enforcement. But going back to the 1 horse per acre, maybe it should be, you have as many horses you want on that acre, but when you create a public nuisance, that's when we're going to step in.
That's exactly
That's
what
it
he's
should
trying to
read.
point out, is that whatever rule you make, you better be able to live by. And if you have it where 2 and it becomes a nuisance, then you go and you get him for being a nuisance. That way you don't have the problem of going, okay, now this guy knows 1 horse per acre, he's gonna go up and down the road looking for 2 horses on every acre, or everything that doesn't match.
There's more than 2 horses on this agenda, if you want to look at all the areas that you have an issue with. And maybe when you have these issues, maybe you should talk to the planning department and bring some of this up before you just bring it up to the public, so they know kind of what you're thinking, and maybe work with them on these
Is
ordinances.
this the time we talk about this or not? Am I confused?
No, it is, and I did have a conversation with Brittany about this because I got a phone call, and it was in Roskynek's district. And then that perpetrated other phone calls coming in, and I did go in and visit with Brittany about this. And so when I bring these things up and I say it's over-regulatory, that's my belief. I believe these should be public discussions. I'm not looking to beat anybody up. She told me the prefaces of how this got here, and that's what this thing is kind of called, the chicken ordinance. So anyway, my bringing these things up in public, and that goes back to a discussion that I think a lot of the things that we talk about, obviously, that's why we have a hearing. It should be a public discussion. So.
Chair, so I'd like to answer that. So there is public hearings, and we always have public hearings, but there's a staff that works on this stuff that maybe you should meet with once in a while, and when they ask you to meet, and you don't have time, but you
Hold
have
on,
time to come
Commissioner
up.
Hadcock, hold on a second. We're not going down that road. We're not.
We
gonna
are, 'cause
beat
we
it. No,
just
we're
said
not.
that
I'm
we
gonna
do it
hammer you down. I'm not gonna go down the road of beating up another commissioner because of his thought process during the public hearing.
That's not beating them up.
No, it is.
It's
You're-
common sense that if you have an issue, you should talk to your staff so they know.
Order,
Your order.
my order,
Yep, good for you.
Ron's order.
Good for you.
All right, let's talk about the matter at hand here. Do we want to have a public conversation about this? When we have private conversations, we all know well that that's not, you can't do
Don't have
that.
private, you do.
These are property rights.
Yep.
Okay.
No one's having private conversations. I wish you
Chair,
wouldn't
if I
say
may,
that.
these numbers are in the existing ordinance right now. So the existing ordinance has these 1 per 1.
Right.
If we want to change or update the table, then that would be my recommendation, that we come back with better numbers or get rid of the numbers or something like that. But these numbers are already in the existing ordinance, so I just want to clarify that.
Perfect.
This
So
does
this-
make it a little less restrictive as far as the 50 feet versus the 25 feet.
With the fencing and whatever you're talking about.
Correct,
Perfect,
correct.
okay.
And-
So now we're all back on track.
Right, so I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. And
Same.
a previous commission, we had an ordinance enforcement officer that was actively enforcing the ordinances. A previous commission actually said, no, we do not want to do that.
Ms. Brittany, we're not talking about that.
No, I know, and I just want to be aware that that's how it got to the complaint basis only, that we don't go out and actively
And we'll have that
look for
conversation
it,
when
so.
we get to the nuisance
I
part.
want you to be proactive.
All right, Commissioner Hadcock, if you have something to say, you can ask for my permission to speak,
Yep.
because nobody can hear when you're talking.
Nope,
We
that's
have
right.
due respect here.
Already
That's all
said
I'm
that.
asking for, just
Yep.
some respect, a little bit of respect.
Don't have people interrupt me then. Thank you.
You never had the floor when they were interrupted. We just kind of allowed a conversation, because it's only really the way we're going to get anything accomplished that we all agree on. We have to have the conversation
You
here.
gotta
and I
let
think-
one finish, please.
Well, you didn't have the floor at the time. It
did.
was no.
You let
Anyway,
her interrupt.
I'm not going to argue with you. So that's the one thing I don't want to have happen. So we'll move with this. So what are you looking for here? Just that change? And it's not changing any of the other, if we want to talk about some more of the restricted stuff, we can have that conversation at another meeting.
Correct. I would recommend that we continue this and then we meet and discuss the numbers so we can change them. Because right now, this is what they are in the existing ordinance to enforce. If those numbers are not palatable
Right.
to this commission and they want to loosen up those numbers or change the language in it, I think it would be in our purview to continue it, to have those discussions, to come back with
Right.
some different
Mr. Chair.
numbers.
Yes, Commissioner Roskinick.
I think Jerry and I will both agree with that because it's our districts. that
I was
we're
going to
gonna
say
do
it's
this.
probably more, yeah, in your guys' districts, but. You want the floor, Commissioner Hadcock, and go ahead and say what you want to say. Go ahead, you got the floor.
So when we have it as 5 people vote, not 2, people keep saying it's their districts, we get the same phone calls as whether we're in your district or not. We still have to solve the same problem, so I keep hearing it's my district. They don't just call your district, they call all of ours. Number 2, when you have something, you don't have private meetings. When you're meeting with your staff and you're doing your job, just like we do with Jordan, just like we do anybody else, we all have those meetings. Those aren't private meetings. Those are meetings to discuss this with the staff, that if you have disagreements, and this is happening in both your districts, we sit down with constituents, we sit down with our staff. Those are not private meetings. We should have them in public always. But we should also have the wherewithal to talk to the staff before we come up to a meeting and see if we can change some of this like we have before, many times, by having real discussions, not behind-the-scenes, backroom deal things. That's not what it's called. It's making a difference with this staff or anything when we send emails or have meetings to make this so it's a purview to everybody. And when we make those changes, because we've had enough complaints in our districts, that we want those changes and that these guys are understanding and they can make that difference and that solution for you. So that's what all I was asking. I don't have private meetings.
So do we have a motion on the floor for this item? Do we want, no motion?
Move to continue to December
Have a motion to
16th.
continue. Do we have a second?
Does that give you enough time?
I would prefer it to be the first meeting in January.
Okay.
I think that would give us more time to discuss and do some
All right.
research.
Substitute motion, or you want to change your motion, Deb?
I'm going to make well, there was no second on that motion. I'm just going to make a motion to continue until the second meeting of January.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue the second weekend in January. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. We'll move on to the next item, which is
G.